Welcome to Sleepy Historian, where old tales whisper by candlelight and memories gently drift into dreams. Tonight, let us journey back to a time long asleep in history.
A Spartan boy is born free. He is cherished by his parents, doted on by his mother, loved by his father. In short, he is everything that the famous saying of Sparta's rival, Athens, would call happy. But within days or even weeks of his birth, this idyllic life will be shattered. For you see, the Spartans believed that a boy could only become a good Spartan citizen through years of brutal physical and mental training. As early as age 7, boys were taken away from their families and sent to live together in communal barracks, a practice that would continue until the age of 30. This process was called the agoge, or upbringing, and it was designed to transform young boys into obedient soldiers, ready to serve Sparta's aggressive foreign policy and defend its borders. By modern standards, the agoge was a terrifying experience. Boys were beaten and punished severely if they broke rules or demonstrated weakness. They had to endure cold, hunger, and exhaustion, and they slept while standing, leaning against each other for support. However, Spartan educators believed that these hardships created strong-willed and fearless men. The agoge was also an intensely social experience. From a very young age, boys were taught to fight and hunt in groups, to rely on their comrades and trust their orders. At age 12, they were given a red cloak, indicating that they were now considered men. And at age 20, they would enter the ranks of the elite military force called the Hittites. The agoge was not just about making good fighters. It was about creating obedient subjects, people who put the needs of the state above all else. Former slaves were sometimes given citizenship through the agoge, showing that any Spartan could rise to the highest ranks if he was tough enough. However, the agoge didn't always produce the desired results. There were cases of Spartan youths rebelling against their educators, refusing to obey orders or deserting their posts. Some historians believe that the famous Spartan revolt against the Helots, the enslaved people of Sparta, was in part a reaction against the agoge and the rigid control it imposed on people's lives. Let us now travel forward in time and meet one of the most famous Spartans in history, King Leonidas. Most people know him as the hero of the film 300, the man who led 300 Spartans to hold off the massive invading army of the Persian king, Xerxes, at the pass of Thermopylae. According to legend, Leonidas was a stern and disciplined ruler who valued courage and self-control above all else. He was willing to sacrifice anything, even his own life, to protect his homeland and his way of life. But what was life really like for the Spartans during the Persian invasion? Historian Paul Cartledge describes how the Spartans lived in a constant state of tension as the Persian threat loomed over them. Men, women, and children alike were involved in preparing for war, training, drilling, and stockpiling supplies. When Leonidas and his men marched out to meet the Persians, they knew that they might never return. The Spartan women are said to have wept as they embraced their husbands and sons, knowing that they were about to face certain death. In the end, Leonidas and his men did hold off the Persians for 3 days, but they were ultimately defeated and killed. Still, their sacrifice bought valuable time for the Greeks to regroup and ultimately defeat the Persians at the Battle of Salamis. So while Leonidas may be remembered as a great hero, it was really the ordinary Spartans, the men, women, and children who kept their cool under pressure and did their duty when it mattered most, who made the real difference. Now let us turn to another aspect of Spartan life that seems both fascinating and a little disturbing: the black broth. This thick, dark soup was a staple of the Spartan diet and was made by boiling the blood of sacrificed animals, along with scraps of meat, vegetables, and bread. To outsiders, the sight and smell of the black broth was so repulsive that it became a symbol of Spartan austerity and grimness. However, to the Spartans themselves, it was just a part of everyday life. You see, the Spartans believed that food should be simple and plain, and that eating too much or too well was a sign of weakness. This belief was reflected in their choice of clothing, which was minimal and functional, and their architecture, which was devoid of ornamentation. Even their meals were designed to be as Spartan as possible. For example, the Spartans preferred to eat alone without conversation, and they used wooden bowls and drank from wooden cups. While we may find the Spartan lifestyle off-putting today, it was actually quite common in ancient Greece. Most people, not just Spartans, ate simple, healthy meals as a way of honoring the gods and keeping their bodies strong. It was only the wealthy who could afford to indulge in luxury foods and fine dining, and even they did so only on special occasions. Finally, let us discuss the role of women in Spartan society. Spartan women enjoyed more freedom than their counterparts in other Greek city-states. They could own property, manage businesses, and even appear in public without being chaperoned. This was because Spartan women were seen as an important resource for the state. Since Spartan men spent most of their time in the army, it was up to the women to keep the society functioning smoothly. However, this freedom came with a price. Spartan women were expected to be strong, healthy, and beautiful, and they were judged harshly if they did not meet these standards. They also had to be obedient and subservient to the men in their lives, first their fathers and then their husbands. While Spartan women may have been freer than other Greek women, they were still very much products of their time. They could not, for example, divorce their husbands or choose their own partners. They were also expected to be primarily focused on domestic duties and to avoid any kind of political power. In the end, Spartan women's lives were as constrained and regimented as those of the men. And so ends our journey through ancient Sparta. What do you think? Was life in Sparta really as wonderful as it seems at first glance? Let us know in the comments below. Thank you for watching this episode. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe and join us next time for another journey through time. Until then, remember, the past is never dead. It's not even past. Life in ancient Sparta was hard, especially if you were a kid. You see, in most Greek cities, a 7-year-old boy would still live with his mom, learning about the world by her side or playing with his friends. But in Sparta, when a boy reached the age of 7, he was considered old enough to be on his own. No more playing with dolls or playing house. At 7, it was time for a Spartan boy to become a man. They had a word for it, a word that means leading or guidance. But don't be fooled by the word. There was nothing gentle about it. It was called the agoge, and at its start, every Spartan boy was given a red cloak and told to steal a blanket from somewhere in the city. Some might have been too scared or too shy to do it. They would go hungry that night. In fact, food was deliberately scarce in the barracks where the boys slept. It wasn't that the Spartans were cruel, at least not in the usual sense. It's just that they thought of childhood as a time of preparation. Life as a Spartan man was hard, so they figured it was better to start learning how to be resourceful and tough as soon as possible. So the boys would run around the city looking for food, hiding from the guards, stealing what they could carry, and then running back to the barracks before anyone noticed. If a boy was caught stealing, he wouldn't get in trouble for that, but he would get in trouble for getting caught. He might get a sharp word or a slap or something worse. The point was to learn to take care of himself without being noticed. And the way to do that was to make sure that everyone knew he was capable of taking care of himself. And so it went, day after day. The boys grew older and tougher, running barefoot across the hot, rocky ground, wrestling in the dust, learning to fight with sticks and then with swords and shields. All the time, the older boys were watching, the teachers and the leaders of the agoge, making sure that everyone was doing their best, or at least trying to do their best. And if they weren't, well, there was always a sharp word, a blow, a punishment that might seem excessive to us, but in Sparta was considered normal. That was the agoge, the making of a Spartan man. It was hard, very hard. But as the boys grew older, they learned that it didn't have to be this way. Not every city was like Sparta. Did you know that the legendary 300 Spartan warriors who held off the Persian army at the Hot Gates were just teenagers? Yes, at Thermopylae, teenage boys fought and died for their city-state. They were just kids. They had no idea how to grow a beard. These warriors were so young that they would have been considered children by today's standards. And that begs the question, what was life like for these Spartan boys who would one day become heroes? Welcome to my channel. And today, let's find out what life was like for the Spartan boys. Their day started before the sun and ended when it was too dark to see. In the morning, their mothers would give them food, mostly bread and cheese, and then they would go out into the streets to play. But this was no time for fun and games. Their every waking moment was dedicated to making them better soldiers. When they played war. With wooden swords, shields, and helmets, they would storm around the city, charging into imaginary battles. And even in this, they were watched, their every move scrutinized by older boys and their teachers. It wasn't enough to simply play the role of a soldier. They had to do it better, more fiercely, more accurately than anyone else. And as the years passed, these games became harsher, the weapons more real. As they grew older, they were whipped and prodded into running, jumping, wrestling, and throwing. If they fell, they were scolded. But if they stayed down, they were punished even more severely. By the age of 12, they had to prove their courage in the dangerous game of cribs, where two boys fought with a small axe until one fell, usually quite literally, head over heels. Only the strong survived this, and those who showed no desire to fight back, no killer instinct, were branded cowards and removed from the agoge. At the age of 13, they left the agoge behind and joined the ranks of the agoon, where they lived in barracks with other boys their own age. Here, their training intensified. They drilled and drilled again, not with wooden swords anymore, but with real weapons. They were taught to use a shield, a sword, and a spear, and how to fight with them like any self-respecting Spartan soldier. During the day, they marched, they drilled, and they fought. At night, they slept, ate, talked, strategized, and prepared for the next day. It wasn't just about physical strength. Boys were trained in silence. They were encouraged to speak little, but to be precise and sharp when they did. The Spartans admired brevity, and even today we use the term laconic to describe short, witty, and cutting speech, a direct legacy of these boys' education. But beneath the surface, there was hunger, exhaustion, and fear. Imagine the steady gnaw of an empty stomach, the stiffness of muscles after endless drills, the anxiety of not knowing what tests might come next. The boys were constantly watched, constantly tested. Weakness was not tolerated, and yet there was a rhythm to this life. The boys grew used to the roughness, the callous feet, the sound of commands. Over time, the hardships became routine. The daily hunger, the thin cloak, the long marches, all became part of the background, a steady hum of discipline that shaped every moment. Occasionally, there were moments of companionship. The boys formed bonds, learning to rely on one another, to fight not as individuals, but as a group. This was the purpose of it all, to erase the self and replace it with unity. The Spartan soldier was not meant to stand alone, but as one piece of the phalanx, the great human wall of shields and spears that was Sparta's pride. Still, the cost was high. Many boys did not survive the training. Those who did grew into hard, unyielding men, but often at the price of tenderness, imagination, and joy. When you picture a Spartan warrior standing fierce in battle, remember the boy he once was, a boy who was hungry more often than he was full, a boy who learned that silence was safer than speech, a boy who knew that comfort was fleeting and discipline eternal. That was the agoge, the crucible in which Sparta forged its soldiers. And now let us gently step forward in time from the life of the anonymous Spartan boy to the story of one man whose name has echoed through the centuries. King Leonidas. Did you know that Leonidas was the only Spartan king to achieve immortality? Click here to find out why. And don't forget to subscribe so that we can tell you the story of the Persian king who wanted to destroy Sparta. Thanks for watching. The year is 480 BCE. From the north, south, and east, the Persians are coming. They've already taken some Greek cities and more will follow, but the Spartans are preparing to stop them. At the hot gates of Thermopylae, they'll make their stand. Leading them is the legendary Spartan king Leonidas. You know his story. How, when the Persian emperor Xerxes asked for the surrender of the Greeks, Leonidas answered, Molem Lave, come and take them. For 300 years, the Spartans held off the entire Persian army, an invading force so huge it has become a metaphor for any massive, overwhelming army. According to legend, when the Spartans ran out of arrows, they fought with their swords. When their swords were broken, they fought with their bare hands until every last man was dead. The Persians had won the battle, but at such a cost that it didn't really matter. News of the heroic stand at Thermopylae inspired the rest of the Greeks to unite and ultimately defeat the Persians. And so thanks to the Spartans, Greece was free. Except none of that actually happened. We don't know who led the Spartans at Thermopylae because the accounts from ancient historians are often dramatically inaccurate or completely made up. And there is no evidence that the Spartans fought to the death or inspired the rest of the Greeks to unite. In fact, the whole story might have been a propaganda campaign by the Athenians to make themselves look good. So we can't even say for sure that Leonidas was the king of Sparta. But what we do know is that Leonidas was a real Spartan who became king around 490 BC and lived to be very old. He ruled during a time of war and he did fight the Persians. So let's imagine him. Picture a young Spartan boy in the late 5th century BCE. He's dressed in a thin cloak, goes barefoot, and has a watchful eye. Like all Spartan boys, he spent his life in the agoge, the intense state-run education system that began when he was 7 and will continue until he is 30. For most of these years, he's been separated from his family, living with other boys his age in a communal setting, where they're drilled in martial skills, expected to excel in combat, and are punished severely for weakness of any kind. Hunger and discomfort are common. There's a strong emphasis on obedience and self-discipline. And gradually, little by little, the boy is shaped into a Spartan man, ready to assume his duty to the state. But there's one crucial detail that sets this Spartan apart from all the others. While his comrades are transformed into obedient soldiers, he becomes a leader. The ephors, the 5 elected officials who run Sparta, have decided he has the right stuff to become a king. And so while the other boys are learning how to be obedient soldiers, he is groomed for greater things. He's still got years of training ahead of him, but he knows that one day soon he will be king. And then one day he is crowned. It's probably not a ceremony he's looking forward to. Being king means that now he must live up to the expectations of his people. And if he fails, it's not just him who will suffer, it's Sparta itself. The year is 480 BC. King Leonidas of Sparta has just heard news that an invading Persian force is advancing through the north. To the south, the Persian fleet is anchored off the coast, waiting for the advance party to finish their march. There's much at stake. Soon, 2 mighty empires will collide at the narrow pass of Thermopylae, the hot gates. But for now, decisions are being made around tables like this by flickering lamplight over bowls of a very special stew. As the Spartans prepare for war, men like Leonidas eat little. They work hard and sleep less. Meals consist of vegetables, mostly lentils, and bread made from barley or wheat. Meat is saved for the needs of the army. Slaves called helots prepare these meals and serve them to citizens, but they also cook for the agoge, the famous Spartan training system for boys. Here, future soldiers are taught not just to fight, but how to endure. Even at this young age, instructors stress self-control and discipline. Food plays a part in this. Boys are served meals that are far from lavish, often with stale leftovers and without delicacies like olive oil or vinegar. Hunger is seen as a useful motivator. One ancient source is that the older boys sometimes steal food, not because they need it, but to test themselves. If caught, they are punished, and rightly so. One contemporary source claims that stealing is the worst offense a Spartan boy can commit. Can you imagine? No second chances if caught. This story tells us a great deal about Sparta. First, that the agoge was taken very seriously. Second, that Spartan society was highly regulated, even for children. And third, that food was important, not just as fuel, but as a test of character. But no Spartan was better trained, no one better equipped to face the coming Persian invasion than Leonidas. As the son of the previous king, he is both ready and unwilling to take his place. He has prepared for this moment his entire life. When messengers arrive asking for aid, he knows what must be done. And he also knows that a long campaign will be necessary, that his soldiers will need sustenance. So while he eats little himself, he makes sure the stores are filled with supplies, especially something unusual, black broth. In the world of ancient Greece, broths were usually made with animal bones or meat, but not in Sparta. Spartan chefs used a special ingredient to color their soup, a certain kind of seaweed that turns any liquid a deep crimson. This striking hue gave the dish its name. In English, we call it bloody soup. Sounds gross. But in Sparta, it was considered a delicacy, reserved for special occasions. What was so unique about this dish is that it was protein-free, forbidden to include anything with a life of its own, only vegetables and spices. We don't know exactly what went into every batch, but recipes from nearby regions suggest the ingredients: carrot, garlic, celery, coriander, fennel, the flower petals called asphodel, and the fruit of the bay laurel tree. Together, they make a rich, flavored broth, thick and dark. It looks like nothing so much as blood. This was perfect for Sparta, where red was the color of courage and sacrifice. It may seem odd to us today, but in a world full of gods and monsters, food with a bloody hue could inspire awe and excitement. And so, as the Spartan army sets out to meet the Persians at Thermopylae, their baggage train follows behind, carrying provisions for the coming battle. There's little time to spare. The Persian host is already advancing on the hot gates. Soon, the Spartans will stand firm against overwhelming odds, fighting in the name of freedom, holding back the tide of invasion. For 3 days, the Persians press forward, but the defenders hold their ground. But on the third evening, news arrives that changes everything. Someone has shown the Persians a secret path through the mountains, a way to outflank the defenders. Leonidas has no choice but to retreat, but it cannot be done in good order. The whole army must pull back quickly, together. But then he sees his allies fleeing through the pass, abandoning the fight. Something snaps inside him. Leonidas dismisses most of his force, but he will not abandon his post. He remains with 300 Spartans and a few hundred more who choose to stay. Together, they will fight to the death. Leonidas may have been a warrior king, but he was also a man. He misses his wife and children. He feels the pull of hearth and home, but duty holds him fast. He stays in defense of Greece, knowing that death awaits. His last meal is probably something simple, perhaps some bread and cheese, nothing fancy, nothing to waste. After all, the Spartans are renowned for their frugality. Then he waits for the Persians. By the next morning, thousands are dead, lying where they fell in the dust. The Spartan sacrifice at Thermopylae becomes a legend, a symbol of heroic resistance. But the next time you sit down to a big feast, pause for a moment and remember, those who lived by different rules those who turned a simple broth into a thing of beauty, those who valued self-discipline above all. Ask yourself, what am I thankful for? How can I do more, be more, try harder? Perhaps these are the most important lessons of all. Thank you for watching. When we imagine ancient warriors, we often picture feasts and banquets in great halls, platters of roasted meats, wine poured into gleaming cups, songs rising with the firelight. But in Sparta, the reality was far different. Here, meals were taken in common, not in private households. Every Spartan citizen was required to eat at the Syssitia, a mess hall of sorts, where groups of men gathered each evening. Attendance was mandatory. It was not a place of indulgence, but of discipline, another reminder that the individual was always second to the collective. And at the heart of these meals was the dish that outsiders found so strange, so off-putting that it became infamous, the melasomos, the black broth. What was it? Ancient sources describe it only in fragments, but enough survives for us to imagine. It was made of pork boiled in blood, with a little vinegar to keep the mixture from clotting, and perhaps flavored with salt and a few herbs. By the standards of the time, when Greeks elsewhere enjoyed olives, cheese, figs, honey, and wine, this was a grim fare indeed. Travelers who visited Sparta often recoiled from it. There is a story of a man from another Greek city who tasted the broth, grimaced, and said that now he understood why Spartans had no fear of death. The humor may be exaggerated, but the sentiment was real. In a world where food was often a marker of social status, the Spartan diet was conspicuously austere. Their meals were deliberately devoid of luxury, not to punish the citizens, but to remind them that their value came not from what they consumed, but from their service to the state. This ethos extended to every aspect of their lives. Their homes were simple, their clothing was functional, and even their art and literature were meant to reinforce the Spartan ideal. For the Spartans, the pursuit of excellence in all things was a way of life. They believed that every citizen should strive to be the best version of themselves, and that this could only be achieved through rigorous training and discipline. Even their diet was a form of training, a way of building endurance and resilience. By denying themselves the pleasures of the table, the Spartans were able to focus on what truly mattered, their duty to their city and their fellow citizens. For them, the joy of feasting was not worth the cost of complacency. And so they ate their black broth with a clear conscience and iron will. For more on Spartan life, stay tuned. In the grand tapestry of ancient Sparta, where men are celebrated for their martial prowess and unwavering discipline, there exists a thread that's often overlooked, the Spartan queen. These women, though living in the shadows of their male counterparts, wove a significant part of Spartan life. They weren't merely wives or mothers. They were active participants in politics, landowners, and most notably, breadwinners. The story of how Sparta became the powerhouse of ancient Greece is well known. After King Minos' son, I returned from Crete with a reformed legal code and a new military system. He set about turning Sparta into a military state. All able-bodied citizens were required to participate in the agoge, the rigorous training program that turned boys into super soldier men. As the male population marched off to their daily drills, farms were managed by helots, the subjugated people whose labor powered the Spartan economy. Women took over the management of their household affairs. This wasn't a passive role. Spartan women, especially the nobility, held considerable power. They oversaw the helot workforce, managed estates, owned property, and received rents. While still expected to be wives and mothers, they had more freedom than their contemporaries in other Greek city-states. They attended public events, offered sacrifices to the gods, and could own and train dogs. Some even accompanied their husbands on military campaigns, tending to the wounded and generally managing camp logistics. But this power came with a price. Spartan women, like their male counterparts, were subject to the whims of the state. Their lives revolved around producing the next generation of Spartan warriors. Marriage was almost compulsory, usually arranged between noble families to maintain their status. The bride price paid by the groom's family to the bride's family was substantial, reflecting the investment a woman represented. A queen, though elevated, didn't escape this obligation. Gorgo, the wife of King Leonidas and mother of King Agesilaus, was a prime example. She was chosen by her father, King Aristodemus, not only to be the bride of the king, but also to produce an heir, securing the Aegeid royal line. When Agesilaus was born, his father died, making Gorgo both queen and regent, a position she held for 12 years until her son came of age. During her regency, she proved to be more than a figurehead. While her son trained to rule, she effectively managed the kingdom, demonstrating the capabilities of Spartan women. Yet, even in her elevated position, she was still beholden to the state. Her personal life was sacrificed to secure a political alliance, a human pawn in a game of power. Spartan women were also judged by a different standard. Their beauty wasn't measured by conventional standards, but by their ability to bear children. A barren wife was seen as a failure, not only in her individual life, but also in her duty to the state. Queen Hera, the wife of King Anaxidamus and mother of King Eurotas, exemplifies this societal pressure. Despite being considered exceptionally beautiful, her inability to produce an heir led to her subjugation. King Alexander, eager to secure his lineage, took another wife, relegating Hera to the sidelines. This wasn't a unique occurrence. Women across Spartan society, including the nobility, faced banishment if they failed to bear children. Such was the importance of population and the continuation of the bloodline. For Spartan women, motherhood was the ultimate achievement, the point at which they reached their highest status. It was during the child-rearing years that they were at their most free. Once their children were sent to live with their fathers at age 7, the women returned to managing their households and estates. However, when it came to their sons' upbringing, they were deeply involved. They taught them history, poetry, and music, ensuring they grew up not only as warriors, but also as cultured members of society. Yet even this pivotal role was tinged with the somber reality of Spartan life. Mothers would bid farewell to their sons at the age of 2, knowing that they might die in battle, a sacrifice deemed necessary for the state. In conclusion, Spartan queens and women, far from being sheltered figures in the epic tales of ancient Sparta, were integral parts of the social, economic, and political landscape. They managed estates, participated in civic life, and ensured the continuation of the royal bloodlines. Yet their lives were far from idyllic. They were subject to the whims of the state, judged by harsh standards, and often sacrificed at the altar of duty. The Spartan ideal, with its emphasis on austerity and service, left no room for privileged comfort, not even for its queens. In the grand narrative of Spartan history, they may not have wielded swords or led armies, but their roles were no less vital. They were the silent partners of Sparta's greatness, shaping its future through lineage and leadership, even as they navigated the rigid confines of a society that valued duty above all else. Now we want to hear from you. What surprised you the most about the role of Spartan queens? And what other aspects of ancient Sparta would you like us to explore in future videos? Share your thoughts below. If you enjoy this series and would like to help us make more episodes, please consider supporting us through a membership platform. Sparta has always been shrouded in a kind of legend, a society of super soldiers, an unmatched military machine, a world of harshness and rigid discipline. While most of ancient Greece was busy crafting great works of art and poetry, Sparta focused on one thing above all else: making better soldiers. Men were taken from their families at age 7 to live together in barracks, enduring harsh training until they became adult soldiers. Women were raised to be strong and active, something that shocked the rest of Greece. And it all came to a head at the infamous Battle of Thermopylae, where 300 Spartans held off the entire Persian army, becoming immortalized in song and stone. But what about when they weren't training or fighting? What did daily life actually look like for the people of Sparta? What did they eat? What did their homes look like? And most importantly, how did they live? To find out, we traveled to Greece to visit the archaeological site of Sparta. We walked through its ancient streets, visited its old homes, and discovered the everyday objects that reveal what really life was like. Now let's go back in time and uncover the truth behind this legendary civilization. Imagine waking up in ancient Sparta. Your home is small, built around a central courtyard with rooms branching off on either side. The walls are made of mud brick, whitewashed stone, or even wood, and the roof is thatched or tiled. But this is your sanctuary. Inside is everything you need for daily life. There are simple tables and chairs made of wood and clay, beds with reed mattresses, storage jars tucked in corners, and maybe even a small altar for household gods. Some homes may have mosaic floors, decorated with geometric patterns or scenes from daily life. Others might boast frescoes on their walls, depicting heroic deeds or mythical creatures. Each home is different, reflecting the personality of those who live there. In the corner is a small kitchen area, usually with a hearth used for cooking and heating the home. Cooking is simple. Meals consist of basic ingredients such as barley, wheat, vegetables, and fruit. Meat is eaten, but not in abundance. As a Spartan, you value health and moderation, avoiding excess in all things. You may start your day with a simple breakfast of bread, dipped in wine or olive oil, along with some fruit for sweetness. Lunch might be leftovers from the evening before, perhaps some boiled vegetables with a bit of cheese. Dinner is the main meal of the day, often enjoyed late in the evening after returning from work or training. It might include a stew made with barley, vegetables, and whatever meat is available. Wine is consumed with meals, but water is the primary drink. Water is brought in from a nearby fountain and stored in clay jars. As a Spartan, you take pride in your home and keep it clean and orderly. Servants attend to any children, helping them with their chores or playing games while you care for other aspects of your home. Slaves do the hard labor, allowing you time to focus on your duties as a citizen. Life in Sparta was not easy, but as a homeowner, you have the comforts you need to live a simple, honest life. We know that Spartans were big on function over form. So when it comes to clothing, they wore what was practical and durable. For men, this meant a simple tunic and cloak made of wool, linen, or leather. The tunic was a knee-length garment worn next to the skin, while the cloak was larger and wrapped around the body for extra warmth or as a symbol of authority. Both were often pinned in place with a brooch or belt. Sandals were popular footwear, protecting the feet from the elements and rough terrain. The color of clothing could vary depending on social status, with higher-ranking citizens sometimes wearing red or purple dyes to signify their importance. However, these colors were expensive and uncommon, meaning most Spartans likely wore more muted tones. Now let's turn our attention to the queens of Sparta, whose clothing choices were a bit more elaborate due to their elevated status. Queens typically wore longer, finer tunics and cloaks made from high-quality materials like linen or silk. They might also have worn jewelry such as necklaces, bracelets, and earrings, as well as decorative hair accessories. Their shoes were often made of finer materials too, like leather or even gold. Despite their wealthier wardrobe, Spartan queens still favored practicality and comfort. Their clothing allowed for ease of movement, and they likely didn't wear overly restrictive or ornate garments that would have hindered their ability to carry out their daily tasks. Overall, the clothing of Sparta was a mix of practicality and symbolism, with different garments serving both functional and social purposes. Whether you were a queen or an ordinary citizen, your attire was a reflection of your place in Spartan society. In Sparta, every hour of the day had its purpose, from sunrise to sunset. Here's a glimpse into their daily routine. The day begins early with the rising sun. At dawn, men would leave their homes to carry out their civic duties. Adult males were expected to participate in government, serving in the assembly or as magistrates. Young men continued their military training, drilling and preparing for their future roles as soldiers. Women of Sparta enjoyed more freedom than their counterparts elsewhere in ancient Greece. While their day started early, like everyone else's, they had more options for how to spend their time. Some women preferred domestic duties, managing households and caring for children. Others delved into politics, offering their opinions and even holding positions of power. Spartan women were also active participants in religious festivals, often taking leading roles in processions and ceremonies. They were expected to maintain their beauty and fitness through exercise and proper diet, ensuring they remained strong and healthy. As the morning progressed, the men would gather in the communal mess halls, known as the syssitia, where they shared meals and discussed politics. Life in the syssitia was communal and egalitarian, with soldiers and officials eating together and forming bonds of camaraderie. Meanwhile, women might have met with friends at public gatherings, discussing news, shopping, or engaging in athletic competitions. The afternoon brought more training and work. Soldiers practiced combat skills, while craftsmen worked in their shops. Women might have continued their domestic duties or joined men in outdoor activities like hunting or long-distance running. As the sun began its descent, the focus shifted to the preparation and enjoyment of food. Men returned home to share meals with their families, while women might have hosted gatherings of their own. Dinner was an important social event, and conversation would have flowed easily between family members and guests. Finally, as night fell, the day wound down. Families gathered for evening rituals, perhaps sharing stories or praying to the gods. The quiet of the night allowed for relaxation and rest before the cycle of daily life began anew. The legacy of Sparta continues to fascinate us today. Its unique approach to education, its emphasis on community, and its commitment to excellence in the face of adversity are all qualities that we can admire and strive for in our own lives. If you want to learn more about ancient Sparta, be sure to check out our other videos. And if you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe to stay up to date on all of our latest content. Thank you for joining us on this journey through time. Until next time, keep exploring the past and discovering the secrets of our world. And so our journey through Sparta comes to its quiet close. We have walked with the boys of the agoge, feeling their hunger, their discipline, and the weight of their endless training. We have stood beside King Leonidas, watching him make his final choice at Thermopylae, bound by duty and destiny. We have sat at the mess hall table, lifting the heavy bowl of black broth, tasting the austerity that defined Spartan life. And we've looked upon the queens of Sparta, women who carried both influence and burden, their strength as vital to the city as that of the warriors themselves. Through each glimpse, a pattern emerges. Sparta was not a place of comfort, nor of softness. It was a society built upon sacrifice, where the individual was always secondary to the whole, where luxury was stripped away and endurance elevated as the highest virtue. Yet, as harsh as it was, Sparta remains in memory not because of ease, but because of what it demanded. Now, at the end of our journey, we find ourselves in the agora, the heart of Spartan life. All around us, the stories we've shared come together in this bustling center of the city. The rhythmic clang of the blacksmith's hammer echoes the disciplined clang of armor being polished. The calls of merchants touting their wares mingle with the shouts of helots carrying out their tasks. The excited chatter of children playing at their games blends oddly with the murmurs of elders discussing strategy and politics. This is the agora, where every Spartan, young and old, free and enslaved, male and female, have their part to play. Here, amidst the vibrant tapestry of Spartan life, we, the viewers, become fellow citizens for a moment. We feel the pulse of the city, hear its heartbeat in the agora, but our role here is not to participate, not yet. For we are time travelers, and our journey is nearing its end. Before we depart, we pause to take in the essence of this place, to understand that Sparta was not just a society, it was a living, breathing entity. Its strength lay not in its palaces or its armies, but in the collective will of its people. The sun dips below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of red and orange, a fitting end to a tale of courage and sacrifice. As darkness falls, the sounds of the evening ritual reach us. The rhythmic beating of the drum calls the Spartans home, a steady pulse urging them to their evening routines. The air grows cooler, and with it, a sense of tranquility settles over the agora. The hustle and bustle of the day quiets, replaced by the soft murmur of returning citizens. We, the viewers, are among them, our steps echoing the journey that brought us here. Each step carries us not just through the physical streets of Sparta, but through the labyrinth of its history, its triumphs and tragedies. The path leads us to the last stop on our journey, the last glimpse into the world of Sparta. Before us lies a quiet olive grove, the gnarled branches of ancient trees forming a canopy overhead. The air is filled with the scent of ripening olives, a stark contrast to the metallic tang of blood and sweat that has lingered in our nostrils these past few days. Here, in this serene setting, we are to spend our last moments in Sparta. As we sit beneath the olive trees, a sense of peace envelops us, a stark contrast to the turmoil and struggle that have been the hallmarks of our Spartan journey. Around us, the whispers of the wind through the leaves blend with the distant murmur of the city, creating a soothing symphony that lulls us into a reflective state. The weight of what we have seen, felt, and experienced in Sparta begins to settle within us, a profound understanding of a way of life so different from our own. Our journey through Sparta, both exhilarating and exhausting, comes to a natural end here in the peaceful olive grove. The city, with its haunting tales of courage and sacrifice, fades into the twilight of our memory. The rhythm of its people, its relentless pursuit of excellence and endurance, echoes faintly in our minds. We carry with us the echoes of their laughter, the clang of their armor, the whisper of their stories. Yet as we depart, we do so with a sense of closure. The tranquility of the olive grove envelops us, a fitting send-off from a society that found peace in simplicity and sacrifice. The struggles of the Spartans belong to another time, another world. Tonight we are safe, far from their battles, far from their harsh discipline. The city sleeps, and so too must we. The rhythm of their lives has passed. The rhythm of your own gentler life continues. And as you drift into sleep, perhaps you carry with you not the hardness of Sparta, but the comfort of knowing that history, with all its struggles and sacrifices, is behind us now. Rest well and good night.
Tonight's story comes to a close. If your eyes have gently shut, then I wish you a deep, peaceful sleep. Until we meet again in the next dream.